And welcome to LA Currents. I'm Ann Pulice. Joining us today, we welcome Deputy Mayor of Infrastructure for the City of Los Angeles, Randall Winston. We're so glad to have you on with us, Randall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Very, very glad to be here.
Yeah, glad you could join us. As Deputy Mayor, let's just dig right in.
Yep.
What departments are you responsible for?
Great question. So, Deputy Mayor of Infrastructure in this administration, I oversee the Board of Public Works, which includes 5 bureaus: the Bureau of Sanitation, Bureau of Engineering, Bureau of Street Services, Bureau of Contract Administration, and the Bureau of Street Lighting, as well as our Department of Transportation, and then the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and really supporting the mayor and her 3 appointees to that body.
Wow, that's a lot of departments and bureaus to be over.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So think transportation and everything in the public right of way.
Okay.
And a lot of the services and kind of everyday challenges that Angelenos experience. Everything from trash collection to, you've got a light that's out on your street that needs to be repaired, or trees that need to be trimmed. It's sort of the things that people can touch and feel on a day-to-day basis.
I want to talk about your experience just really briefly before we dig right into the responsibilities of Deputy Mayor.
Absolutely.
You have such a fascinating background. You went to Harvard, then you were in Virginia, became an architect, went to architecture school. Then now you're a lawyer as well. You got your JD. All of this is all very diverse and interesting. Has it led to this point, your experiences?
It has. I think the through line through each of those experiences has been just a passion for public service, and for doing, I feel like, what was my not just part but really responsibility to give back to people. I mean, these are difficult jobs and they are complex, I think, interdisciplinary in their nature. It's why I was led, just again from curiosity and a public service standpoint, from architecture to law. But I started in government when I was in undergrad.
Yeah.
And so if there is any through line, it is that serving people.
I love that. So getting back to the infrastructure, within all those departments, there is a through line, which is to keep the city of Los Angeles running.
Yes.
On the daily, what are some of the challenges that you meet being over all of the infrastructure of Los Angeles?
Very good question. And when we started this administration, when I came into my role now just over 2 years ago, we knew we were facing some headwinds. A lot of incredible policies on the books of impacting our right-of-way. Vision Zero, Mobility 2035, Complete Streets, measures really from the past 10 years to improve our streets and their safety and quality of life. Challenge, I think, was delivery a lot of those services. So a sense that the coordination between our bureaus and departments, the greater city family, that maybe wasn't what it could be. Projects not being delivered on time, not being delivered on budget, and our services kind of reflecting that. You add to that the challenges that were faced during the pandemic. Huge change, obviously, in the way folks worked, how they recreated, used some of our facilities, certainly downtown, but throughout the city. And of course, an increase in our unhoused population, also affecting our streets and our quality of life. So lots of challenges. How we approach it, how the mayor approached it, I'd say kind of two broad perspectives, which are really sets of policies that came through the mayor's executive orders. Number one, customer service. So the city had already began undertaking a revamp of our 311 system. This is the system that folks can use to request everything from a trash pickup to reporting illegal dumping to removing graffiti, you name it. That system was outdated by about a decade, and so revamping that system, but alongside it, completely changing how we do customer service. The mayor charged the city with developing a first of its kind customer service policy. So how our city employees in the field, on the phones, interacted with the public, with Angelenos, with an eye towards better service. So that's on the service side. And we just now launched actually a new 311 platform You can download it on your phone today. Very excited about that. But the flip side, I think, of better customer service is better service delivery. We are, or really have been, one of the only major cities in the nation that doesn't have a long-term capital infrastructure plan. So looking at how we budget for our capital improvements and our work in the public right-of-way beyond just a single-year budget process to multiple years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I think the mayor feels strongly that only through a long-term budgeting process will we be able to get through our backlogs in service. Our backlogs for sidewalk repairs, for tree trimming, for repairing our street lights, again, everything in our public right-of-way. We are doing that now. Doing that first in this upcoming budget year with a capital improvement plan focused on the games, the Olympic and Paralympic Games coming up in 2028, and of course the major events before that. So the World Cup in 26, the Super Bowl in 27, and then all to come in 28. So challenges to come for sure, but I think really exciting improvements that are in place and to come.
You mentioned the Olympics, the Paralympics, the FIFA World Cup, all these huge events that are going to be in Los Angeles.
Oh, yes.
You took a trip to Paris to check out how they did it.
It did.
I mean, I would love to hear just the moment by moment of your time in Paris, but we don't have time. But what are some of the big takeaways that you came home and said, okay, this is either what they did right or we could improve on that, but
Yes.
we definitely needed to do that. Was there something that stood out for the city of Los Angeles?
Absolutely. I would say many things. Maybe first of all, I have to express now my appreciation, our appreciation, and what feel like colleagues in the city of Paris. Not only did we go and sort of visit the venues and some of the events, but they and the mayor of Paris made it a point to reach out to us beforehand, create kind of workshops where we were able to deep dive in Paris on the mechanics of how they built their events, how they handled or pieced together their venue approaches, their security, other components, really all components of putting on the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and at the same time sharing lessons learned. Candidly, what worked, what didn't work, with an eye towards how we in Los Angeles can do it better. So really want to express, I think, my appreciation and certainly the mayor's appreciation, which I know she had, with the entire Paris delegation and the mayor for that kind of openness and exchange, because it will lead to a better 2028.
Yeah.
Now, when we were there, some things that I would point to. Number one, Paris's commitment to a games for all. So not just sort of curating the games for those who held tickets and were able to buy tickets, but to every single part of the city, creating what they called activations or fan experiences, where you could not just watch the games on a big screen, but you could use a space that was activated for young people to play sports, for families and parents to play on a playground or use that area in a different way than they had prior to the game. So walking, biking, etc. It really created a much more inclusive experience, and that I know is one area that we want to model, the mayor wants to model, insofar as looking at Los Angeles' legacy for the game. So in every council district, having an activation or an experience or set of experiences that Angelenos can really take advantage of to take part in the games, and even if you can't afford a ticket.
Exactly.
So there was that. There was I would be remiss if I didn't mention just the overall drive to make Paris more walkable, more bikeable, and really experiencing a new city than prior to the games because of those improvements. I think Angelenos obviously has a different metropolitan layout. We, though, are now looking very closely at and actually expanding how we're thinking about our games route network, connecting our venues where athletes live and train during the games, and then, of course, how Angelenos can get around not just the city, but all of the parts of LA that make this city what it is.
Right.
So unique, not just in America, but around the world. So our major tourist destinations, everything that makes culturally LA so special, we want to highlight that during the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And we want to do so in tandem with the bevy of partners across the region.
They did a great job in Paris of that, seeing all the
Yes.
different venues where things were that highlighted the city, and I think Los Angeles has a great opportunity to do much the same. In '86, during the Olympics then, there was trucking at night. Major work was done at different times. There was sort of this flex schedule when you were sort of coming and going, and it worked really, really well. Is there something that you folks are working on over there in the Office of Infrastructure that does that as well?
There is, that question has come up a few times because, I will admit I was not old enough to experience the Olympics in the early '80s. Remember it well, but the mayor remembers it very, very well, and she has remarked numerous times on just what you've noted, how traffic and work may adjust or be changed in order to accommodate the visitors, the different flows that we can anticipate. So absolutely, that is something that we are looking at closely. I'll add just a few comments to that. So as the venues get settled upon, which our council is finalizing along with LA 28, we're looking at how we can meet the needs from an expanded bus system. We know we'll need to procure thousands, really, of additional buses in order to move towards what's going to be a kind of a car-free or transit-dependent games. And so we want to the greatest extent possible, get folks out of their single-passenger vehicles, on our trains, on our buses, biking, walking, and to do that, it's going to take not just sort of physical improvements, but I think changes to how people work when they work, where they work, whether remotely or in their places of business, and we're absolutely going to need to work with our partners in the region to effectuate that.
Partners such as whom?
Business, philanthropy, the county, other cities, as you know, Inglewood and Long Beach and others are hosting events as well, and venues as well. So we're going to have to work closely with all of those partners to ensure that Los Angeles and the greater region is not the kind of what sometimes it characteristically can be or stereotypically can be referred to congested, difficult to get around. I do recall from those who again were here in the '84 Olympics this concern or worry about LA turning into a traffic nightmare and sort of this sort of fear that there would be it would be very, very difficult for Angelenos to get around. We not only want to avoid that, we want to sort of do the opposite. And this was actually a challenge that came up in Paris as well. In talking with my counterparts there, there was a fear on the part of Parisians, local Parisians, that their transit system, and their streets would be overrun by those from outside. And while there may be economic benefits, it would be difficult for folks to say. So they would want to leave Paris. Yeah. We want Angelenos to stay.
Right.
To embrace the games, enjoy the games, whether or not you're a ticket holding patron, right? And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, positive experience for everyone. Let's talk a little bit about the fire recovery efforts.
Yes.
How have those efforts gone? How are they going between city? I know, as you were saying, you're working with a lot of other, it takes a village basically to put on the Olympics. Something like this, fire recovery, it takes a village. You're working with state, federal, as well as city groups. How's that going?
It takes a village, it takes a metropolis, right? To extend that metaphor even further. Very, I think, excited, and I know the mayor and all partners are proud of the fact that we are undertaking the fastest recovery in modern California history, ahead of schedule on more or less, I think, every front. We're at today about 1,300 parcels or lots that have been cleared of debris, months ahead of schedule, and when compared to the fires in Paradise and in Santa Rosa of the past. The Army Corps of Engineers, I know just this week, ramped up from 89 crews to 95 crews, moving at a clip of 40 parcels per day, which is getting them on track to remove debris before the end of the summer. Again, record-breaking time. In tandem with that, we just had earlier this week, the mayor was out in the Palisades to celebrate breaking ground on a couple of properties that have already secured permits and are rebuilding their homes right now. Just yesterday, she was at the rec center, which we know is such a kind of the cultural heart, you might say, of the Palisades community, standing hand in hand with Steadfast LA and the Lakers to put forth a vision for rebuilding and really reimagining the rec center. And so on really every front, we know that there are challenges and there's certainly questions to be answered, but the work is moving swiftly and in kind of lockstep, not just with community partners, but with, as you've mentioned, the county, the state, and our federal partners as well. And certainly wouldn't be possible without that locking of arms.
Is there some sort of a permit fast tracking that the city has now done in order? Because getting permits, anyone who's been through that process, you're like, this is impossible. The fact that you're saying, oh, actually, we're breaking ground, they're permitted. Has there been sort of a, we've found the way to do it quickly and efficiently for the people who are ready?
So true. You couldn't be more correct. And yes is the response. So shortly, actually, after the fires broke out, and even before they were fully extinguished, the mayor issued a first executive order to do just that: cut through red tape, make it as easy as possible for those who want to build like for like to do so, frankly, administratively. So waiving local CEQA requirements. There were a number of exemptions and kind of clearing of barriers coming from our state partners and our governors, all credit due to them as well. And removing discretionary processes that in regular order would have slowed things down. Importantly, the mayor established a one-stop shop, so putting all of our bureaus and departments in one location so that when folks come forward with their plans or their architects or contractors, they can go through that plan check process as quickly as possible, all the parties in one place. And that has led to the speed that we're now seeing. The focus, we know, just looking at experiences from other disasters, we've got to get the debris out. We really can't ramp up the rebuild to the way that we know will eventually be until we get all of that debris out, and that's why we've had such a sharp focus on removing debris. Getting over that hump of removing debris will allow us to continue to quickly move towards the rebuild via the mayor's executive order.
You said like for like in regards to permitting. Are you talking about my home was lost in the fire, same footprint, building another home? Is that what that means? That
is exactly what it means. So same footprint, and then actually up to 110%, so about 10% more. I'll also note, so mid-January that executive order was released. Speed, removing barriers, we got to get there as fast as possible. But at the same time, and this just a couple of weeks ago, the mayor also released an order making sure that as we rebuild, we do so in a more resilient way. So yes, we can move quickly, but we can also ensure that Palisades residents and frankly the greater Los Angeles community, if I can use that word, have a more resilient community and city to go with it. What does that mean? It means that creating an equally fast track for those who want to build all electric with the highest degree of fire-resistant materials and hardening of landscape around their properties. It means looking closely at undergrounding infrastructure and joint trenching for our power distribution, our water supply, and other components in the public right-of-way. It means looking at the history of our plans, hazard mitigation, emergency management, fire protection, vegetation and landscape management, looking at all those plans anew to sort of say, okay, how can we align ourselves with newer policies that are coming down from the state to ensure that as we rebuild in the Palisades, we are incorporating best practices nationally for what is happening as we, again, rebuild our streets and the surrounding wildlife-urban interface, and really all components of that community.
Looking at lessons learned from the potential redevelopment that you're just now embarking on for those areas that were affected by the fire, are there certain things that you're checking off in your mind going, we can implement this just on a regular, it doesn't have to be disaster. These are best practices that maybe we weren't using before, yes, but we found them and now we need to use those. Have you found some of those little golden nuggets, or are we still too deep in the weeds right now?
No, I think there's some big golden nuggets.
Oh, nice.
Some big blocks of gold,
yeah.
and beyond. And I think the lessons will continue. I think
sure.
The first thing I'd say is that for the first time in a while, we at the city are standing up, or have stood up, a recovery group. By that I mean looking at best practices from FEMA under what's called their National Disaster Recovery Framework and incorporating that quite literally in how our emergency management department operates. So there's response, there's recovery, and then there is making our city more resilient to future disasters. Mm-hmm. And we know that as climate change worsens, the risk of climate change impacts increases. And so having that recovery capacity as a permanent fixture of our city, especially as we look to major events and beyond, is critical. And that is a lesson that's being incorporated now. Beyond that, I mean, I think you can point to, I'd say, any part of the recovery and in turn start to kind of take away lessons learned that we're either incorporating or looking at more closely in other parts of the city. Undergrounding and how we think about sort of joint trenching, what has previously been above ground and moving that underground, that's an area that we're looking at very closely. Now, obviously, there are cost implications, and that's also something we are absolutely factoring in our Department of Water and Power, but it contributes to resiliency and our long-term ability to withstand, again, future impacts. Our power supply, our water supply, and hardening on both of those fronts, that has impacts and I think lessons learned that we'll be able to apply, I think, down the road for other parts of our city for sure.
What is the state of public transportation currently here in Los Angeles? I know we're talking a lot about, we've got all these big events that are coming
yes.
up, but there's also people who very literally have to use the public transportation mm-hmm. on the daily to get to and from their job, school, whatever. It's very important, even though the city of Los Angeles was not built around the public transportation grid. Now we're very slowly and meticulously trying to become a public transportation
yes.
city. How is the infrastructure right now? What sort of things are you in your mind going, this is the next big thing for our public transportation infrastructure that's really going to make the city work?
That's a great question. And I think, this administration, I'll say, myself and obviously the mayor, fortunate to walk into what has been really a renaissance in transportation, public transit, multi-modal ways of thinking about LA over the past 10 years. Vision Zero, the passage of Mobility 2035 and improvements on our streets, the passage of Measure M, new ways to fund these projects and investments, securing the games, the Olympic and Paralympic Games, yep. and then most recently the passage of Measure HLA, really kind of putting the city to the task of improving our bicycle, pedestrian, and other networks, again, aimed at making our streets more walkable and livable. We are undertaking through Metro really an unprecedented capital endeavor, building out our city's rail, priority bus lanes, our mobility hubs that will again accrue to the Olympics. I would add to that, again, earlier on in the mayor's administration, a new street furniture program So looking at how we can provide the shade, and again, looking at resiliency, the kind of climate resiliency in communities that need that shade most and rely on our bus system. I'm very, very happy to share that we've passed a milestone this year of installing 100 new bus shelters, and not based on ad revenue as has been done in the past, but based on equity, based upon where those shelters are needed most. And we're going to continue to do that, through the games and beyond. And so there is a lot happening to, I think, contribute to mode shift, which is getting folks out of their single passenger vehicles, using our rail, our buses, biking, walking. Yes, it's a challenge. Yes, we are Los Angeles. We are Southern California. I remember how excited I was to get my first car when I was 15.
That's right.
So that is a part of who we all are. But that doesn't mean that we can't sort of change the way in which we go about moving here in LA, and we are. And I think that's very exciting.
I've seen some of those new bus shelters. Those are covered under Measure HLA. Is that what the new bus shelters are?
So separate, and
okay.
I'll try to explain there. So it has an acronym we call it sort of STAP, a little bit clunky acronym, the Street Transit Amenities Program.
Okay.
But a couple of years ago, the City Council, in partnership with the mayor, passed actually established what I think is a pretty pioneering program to build our bus shelters, entirely new. So historically, we had a partnership to roll out bus shelters, again, based upon ad revenue that was sort of accrued to the company that ran that program. The new program allows the city to not just capture that revenue, but recycle the ad revenue back into the program to build more shelters. It also means that we, the city of Los Angeles, could control where the bus shelters are built. So it's self-sustaining, and we have control to ensure that our priorities, be it equity, ensuring that our most vulnerable communities and most vulnerable to heat, that they benefit from where those shelters are located. In our 23-24 fiscal year budget, the mayor dedicated $8 million from the general fund, and then an additional $30 million on loan from our public works fund to roll out those shelters, so to accelerate their installation. And that's what's been happening. And again, we've got to ensure that the rollout of those shelters is in tandem with the major events that are coming. And just to drill down one little step further, we know that our first last mile connection, so the places that people go from a station or a bus stop to other major hubs, around the kind of the radius around those areas is critical. Meaning that those areas, ensuring that they're more walkable, more bikeable, that folks feel more comfortable getting there on their 2 feet or on their bikes. That's what we want to look at especially closely.
Well, Randall, thank you so much for joining us today. So glad to have you on. Do you have a couple websites you'd like to share with the folks at home?
I do, and thank you again. So first, the mayor's website, where you can learn more all about the mayor's activities, press releases, what we're up to across the city. That's mayor.lacity.gov. And then second, the recovery. Folks can look at the movement of debris, how quickly folks are rebuilding, and just tracking our progress, as well as resources for those impacted by the fires, both today and looking into the future. And that is recovery.lacity.gov.
Very good. We have those up for folks to see and access. Again, thanks, Randall, for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And that does it for LA Currents. I'm Ann Pulice. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.